customers are getting, technology savvy, right? People are not reaching to the, branches. People are started getting into the different, channels to access and all. The problem is the more, spin up, the more customer will get into the place. So your security threat, your way of, dealing the system is extremely, imposing into the system. So that means banks. So since I am coming from the HDFC Bank, and prior to that, I was part of the Axis Bank. We have seen, the guiding principle setting up the all the security. What he talks about the GDPR. So we started thinking how we will be able to manage it, right? Every time that is a cyber attack, every time there is any controls we need to put, every time we started going to the cloud and all, right? So now the security is extremely key, and the policy is a 300 plus kind of controls, mechanism, GDPR, then rest of things we need to implement it. And that's why the challenge is very huge, and we need to be a bit careful, with the different policy coming into the picture. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the insight. Now I'm going beyond banking and financial sector. You see, banking and financial sectors are always been regulated and they have been instructed to manage data properly, how the data has to be passed. So I guess, especially the large banking and financials who are regulated have followed certain regulations. But now let's talk about e-commerce companies, the startup companies, or automobile industries. Even automobile is, let's say, bigger, small offline companies who is collecting data. Now, because DPDP bills talks about only three responsibility. One is a data principal, which is us, which is consumer, and then data fiduciary, which is you guys, and then, of course, the government of India, right? All the responsibility, most of the responsibility has been given to data fiduciary. They have to hire a data protection officer. They have to invest in a lot of infrastructure. Do you think these startup world or small companies who is thriving to grow can spend that much of money? Like, Pravas, you can talk about.
Yeah, so there are two sides to it. One, from the organization's point of view, when you look at the organizations, like you said, the startups and all, definitely there is not a big appetite to spend so much in terms of putting the things in place. But there comes the opportunities and also the ecosystem, whether the ecosystem is there or not, and those ecosystem can be made available at a cheaper cost or not. So that is from the organization's point of view. And but as he said, everybody has started thinking towards it because the data is the key to all the organizations. And if you really want to scale and succeed, you have to depend on data. And more so in the banking industries, unless and until you build those trust and create protections to the data of the consumers, it will be too difficult for you to be in the market. If you look at the consumer side, one is as per the new, even RBI has also come up saying you have to take the consents from the customers and you have to erase as and when they want all those things. But from the consumer point of view, when you look at, let's say, I have given consents to hundreds of websites and hundreds of the companies. Do I know what are the consents which has been taken off, or I do not have any comprehensive list where I have given the consent to, right? So while it has to be, from the organization's point of view, they have to abide to, protect the data and all, but at the same time, the government or the ecosystem has to come up saying, as a consumer, I should also know where exactly I had given the consent and whether those consents are being used, not used, or expired, all those things. So yeah, so it is a challenge from both the sides, but has to be taken up. I mean, this is a high time.
Right. So now there are small companies. I can tell you there are in India lakhs of SMEs who collects data, who wants to grow fast. They do not have a proper IT infrastructure. Forget about security. They can't hire one CISO, not at all. I mean, CISO are very costly, by the way, right? So, for them, there is a huge risk, right? So, do you think DPDP bills has to be actually discussed properly to take care of all these aspects?
No, absolutely. You pointed out a very valid question. So today, if you look at many of these SMEs, they do not use a antivirus in their laptop or the PC. So forget about putting a CISO or to that extent. So it has to be discussed, and when government is coming up with so much of detailed data protection regulations and all, they have to also enable the ecosystem. I'm again coming back to the same thing. Unless and until you create an ecosystem and enable it, it's very difficult for the small organizations to abide those rules and thrive.
Absolutely. So Vikas and Jafar, since you deal with these data fiduciary and they exchange a lot of data with you guys, right? Especially from SMS, WhatsApp. Do you get pressure to manage this infosec and entire follow up the and do you think going forward is going to be more stringent? How you store data, how you retrieve data, how you see data, because third-party integration is very, very important to sustain the entire ecosystem, right? So I'll ask this question to both, people from Axis Mutual Fund as well as HDFC Bank, because you deal with these people. I'm just giving an example. There could be many more. You have more than 2,000 vendors, right? But you have to share data, right? So do you find issues because there is a cost of uh, a product which you are servicing, product or services, and there is additional cost which you are going to incur without getting the revenue out of it, right? So how do we balance it and overall, what do you see?
Oh, it's working. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so as far as the requirements of the clients are concerned, like, of course, the responsibility of storing the data, securing the data, is on the enterprises. But they do use multiple vendors to transmit the data. So we have requirements from our international aggregators who are doing messaging or CPaaS solutions to other enterprises to securely store the data and to prevent it from, like, security threats, which is as Mr. Pravash really said, like, nobody even uses an antivirus on their systems. So yes, we're getting concerned about the security and the storage, the encryption of the data, which is really important. Of course, we may be sharing certain personal data, but there is certain sensitive data in the message content or the conversations as well. So what I believe is, like, the startups, it would be an overhead to them. It's really a difficult task to manage what all these regulations worldwide are doing. But there is a dire need of over-the-shelf products, which may be on SaaS-based models or per transaction-based models, like your Consentica. Like, it's really important how you manage that consent, and yeah, people should know what we have opted for and how we can opt out. So that there is an importance that many startup ecosystem especially. I mean, they need to have an over-the-shelf product which takes care of these regulations worldwide, and which guarantees them about all these risks involved if there are data leaks, and especially on taking the consent side as well. So yeah, I mean, I believe that the approach we have taken is integration with such third-party providers, so that we can give an embedded solution, a turnkey solution to the enterprises to manage from the consent to the termination of such messages, or even storing those messages. So yeah.
From your side, how do you manage the third-party vendors? What are the assessment and how exactly the process? Of course, the process gets evolved with time, but uh, from a DPTP perspective, the new regulation perspective, are you still putting the same, or a lot of change has happened or is happening?
Yeah, I can say there are a lot of changes that has happened. It is not a normal engagement right now. It's like we are bound from the regulatory side to make sure our vendors are at the same par at what we have. So agreements are also, the clauses are also being changed accordingly. People are also demanding around how much cyber insurance you have from the third party. So because if anything happens, you should be able to. So whether you have the same capability or at the same time, we also, before onboarding any vendor, so people have a thorough checklist. Like, it's not it's like entire audit happens before you onboard any vendor. And then too, as he rightly said, hardly anything is allowed to store. Now the vendors are allowed to just process the things. Aggregators are there. So this is how the controls are established. The assessments are done, regular audits are done. Even I can say RBI or all regulatory firms have issued guidelines for third-party assessment, outsourcing guidelines, which are clearly demarking like what is being required. So, but
How do you, how, so these kind of things, can be done with a large organization who is your third-party vendor, but they are large. Now, let's say a lot of innovations happening on AI, ML, blockchain, uh, so these are very small companies. They don't have the bootstraps, right? But they would like to work with a large organization, and they have a good product. If you go through the entire chain, I mean, they will bleed, right? They may not be able to do it. So we have to find a balance between these two. I understand from regulatory perspective. I'm completely with you that regulators are regulators. What we also deal with TRI and so. But at the same time, there has to be a way out. To incorporate these guys also with new innovations. I mean, that's open to all.
I have view bit different. So I have seen, I mean, somewhere we are being heavily regulated, but fintech company they are not, right? But on the same time, they do the innovations very fast. Yeah, 2004 ATM started, right? But today all the disbursement, everything people started getting into the blockchain. Some people started metaverse and all, right? So the currency dispositions and all are getting, enhancing largely. And these are the fintech behind the scene, behind the mind. These are the people who are doing it. So almost most of the banks, if you look at a JPMC or any investment bank globally, they are all tied up for doing lot of investment work in fintech, be it in their lab or be it outside lab. Now, if you look at the, the vendor onboarding, the processing, what you talked, right? So there is a natural, all these peoples or the matured player, they have a proper checklist and all. But it's very tough to, manage also the, third-party vendor and all. Many times they click the, your data point and they take it, right? I have seen a couple of fraud.